The Winters estate sprawled across 5 acres of manicured grounds, its imposing stone facade reflecting the autumn sunlight. Inside, despite the grandeur of vaulted ceilings and priceless art, a peculiar emptiness echoed through the halls. Jonathan Winters moved through his home like a ghost. Present, yet somehow absent, his tall frame perpetually bent toward his phone or laptop. "Dad, can we have dinner together tonight?" 10-year-old Noah asked, his small hand tentatively touching his father's sleeve. Jonathan glanced up from his device, momentarily disoriented, as if he'd forgotten where he was. "I have the Tokyo call at 7, buddy. Mrs. Bennett will set you up in the kitchen." He ruffled Noah's sandy hair, an automatic gesture that felt hollow to them both. Noah's shoulders slumped as he wandered away. The housekeeper, Mrs. Bennett, exchanged a worried look with Jonathan, who pretended not to notice. 2 years had passed since Rebecca's death, but grief still clung to the mansion like morning mist, refusing to burn away. Jonathan had responded by building an empire even larger than before, as if wealth could fill the void his wife had left. Noah had withdrawn into books and silence. "Mr. Winters, the agency sent over the files for the tutor candidates," his assistant, Thomas, announced from the doorway. "Just pick someone qualified," Jonathan muttered. "Double quotes, sir. You've rejected the last 4. Perhaps you should review these yourself." Jonathan sighed and accepted the tablet. He scrolled through impressive resumes until a particular photo caught his eye, not because of any extraordinary beauty, but because of the genuine warmth in her smile. Cassandra Rhodes, 28, literature and mathematics specialist. 3 days. Later, Cassandra stood in the foyer, taking in the cathedral-like space with wide eyes. Unlike the polished professionals who had interviewed before her, she wore a simple blue dress and carried a worn leather satchel. "The Winters residence is quite something," she said to Mrs. Bennett. "It's a house, not a home." The housekeeper replied quietly, "Not anymore." When Noah appeared at the top of the grand staircase, Cassandra smiled and waved. The boy regarded her warily. "You must be Noah. I'm Cassandra. Hey, hear you're reading well." Above your grade level, Noah descended slowly. "I like books. They don't disappear." Jonathan entered from his study, just in time to hear his son's words. A flicker of pain crossed his face before he composed himself. "Ms. Rhodes, welcome." His handshake was brief, professional. "My assistant has outlined your responsibilities." Noah's education is paramount. Cassandra met his gaze directly. "Education isn't just academics, Mr. Winters. It's also about nurturing curiosity and joy." Jonathan blinked, unused to being challenged. "Well, you were highly recommended. I'll leave you to get acquainted with Noah." As he retreated to his office, Jonathan felt a strange sensation, like someone had opened a window in a long-sealed room, allowing fresh air to circulate once more. Cassandra transformed the stuffy 3rd floor library into a vibrant learning space within days. Gone were the rigid lesson plans and timed drills Noah had endured with previous tutors. Instead, mathematics became treasure hunts through the garden, calculating distances and areas. Literature leapt off the page through dramatic readings where Noah's soft voice gradually grew stronger. "He's speaking more," Mrs. Bennett commented to Jonathan one evening, setting down his solitary dinner. "Ms. Rhodes has him explaining the plots of his books to the kitchen staff. Even got him to laugh yesterday." Jonathan looked up, fork paused midair. "Laughed Noah?" Mrs. Bennett nodded, a smile crinkling her eyes. "First time since, well, you know." Later that night, Jonathan found himself wandering toward the library instead of his study. He paused outside the door, hearing Cassandra's voice animatedly describing constellations. "The stars tell stories, Noah. Ancient people looked up and connected the dots, just like we're doing with this chart." "Dad used to know all the constellations," Noah said softly. "Before Mom got sick." Jonathan's chest tightened. He nearly walked away but forced himself to enter instead. "Astronomy tonight?" Noah and Cassandra looked up from where they knelt over a star map spread across the floor. Cassandra smiled, unembarrassed to be caught in such an informal teaching position. "Mr. Winters, perfect timing." Yo. "Noah was just saying you're quite the astronomer." "It's amateur at best," Jonathan said, remaining by the doorway. We're mapping the night sky for our science project, Noah explained, excitement making his words tumble faster than usual. Ms. Rhodes says we can use the telescope on the balcony, your mother's telescope, Jonathan said reflexively then. Regretted his tone when Noah's face fell. Cassandra rose gracefully. I think Rebecca would love that her telescope is helping Noah learn, don't you? Knowledge shared is never lost. The simple truth of her words disarmed him. Jonathan found himself nodding, then kneeling beside them to examine the chart. You've got Orion's belt marked incorrectly. Here, let me show you. For 30 minutes, Jonathan stayed, his expensive suit jacket discarded as he helped them map the winter sky. When his phone buzzed with a call from Singapore, he hesitated before silencing it. The next morning, Thomas found Jonathan reviewing the company's educational foundation grants instead of acquisition paperwork. Should I reschedule the board meeting? Thomas asked, surprised. Jonathan glanced up. No, but add education initiatives to the agenda and find out if any of our buildings could host a planetarium. That evening, Noah appeared at Jonathan's office door, clutching a book. Cassandra says you might be too busy, but would you read with me? Jonathan stared at his son, this fragile bridge extending toward him. He set aside his laptop. I'm never too busy for you, Noah. Both knew it wasn't entirely true. Not yet, but it was a beginning. Spring arrived, bringing color back to the estate. Gardens. Noah's tutor sessions often moved outdoors, where Cassandra had him identifying flora and calculating growth patterns. From his office window, Jonathan increasingly found himself watching them instead of his market reports the way. Cassandra threw her head back when laughing, how Noah's serious little face would light up under her attention. She's good for him, Mrs. Bennet remarked, catching Jonathan at the window. She's an excellent educator, he replied formally. Mrs. Bennet gave him a knowing look. That's not what I meant. That evening, heavy rain drove Noah and Cassandra. Inside early, from their garden mathematics lesson, they settled in the rarely used living room, where Cassandra helped Noah with a creative writing assignment. Jonathan, passing by with a coffee, paused at the unfamiliar sound of conversation. In that part of the house, Rebecca had loved that room, with its wall of windows facing the garden. After her death, he'd avoided it entirely. Cassandra. Noah's voice carried through the partially open door. Can I ask you something important? Of course. Anything. What does love mean? Real love, not like in fairy tales. Jonathan froze, coffee forgotten in his hand. Cassandra took a thoughtful breath. That's a big question. I think I'm forgetting what it feels like, Noah admitted, his voice small. With Mom. Jonathan leaned against the wall, out of sight, but unable to walk away. Love isn't something you forget, Noah, Cassandra said gently. It changes form, but it stays with you. Real love isn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It's about finding someone who feels like shelter during a storm, who sees you clearly and chooses you anyway. Do you think Dad will ever find it again? He's always alone. Jonathan held his breath. Your dad carries a lot of love inside him, Cassandra answered carefully. I see it whenever he looks at you. Sometimes people who've loved deeply are afraid to open their hearts again because they know how much it hurts to lose someone precious. Like Dad's afraid? Maybe. But love isn't about being fearless. It's about finding someone to make your heart feel safe enough to be brave again. Jonathan set his coffee down silently, a strange warmth spreading through his chest. For the first time in years, he recognized the feeling, hope. Do you think anyone could love us? Noah asked. Even though we're kind of broken? Oh, Noah. Cassandra's voice cracked slightly. You and your dad aren't broken. You're healing. There's a big difference. And yes, I think anyone would be incredibly fortunate to be loved by either of you. He's unable to listen further without revealing himself. Jonathan retreated to his study, his mind replaying Cassandra's words. That night, he pulled out old photo albums for the first time since the funeral, tracing Rebecca's smile with his fingertips. I don't know how to do this without you, he whispered to her image. But for the first time, the crushing weight of those words felt slightly lighter. Subtle shifts began appearing in the rhythm of the Winters household. Jonathan started joining Noah and Cassandra for lunch twice a week, ostensibly to check on academic progress. He requested detailed updates on Noah's curriculum, which led two lengthy conversations with Cassandra about educational philosophy that somehow drifted into discussions about literature, music, and their childhoods. "You gave up a promising research position to become a tutor," Jonathan remarked one afternoon as they walked the garden perimeter. Watching Noah sketch plant specimens, Cassandra nodded. Academia was prestigious, but isolating, mist-making. A direct difference, like you're doing with Noah. He's an extraordinary child. Your wife must have been remarkable. Jonathan smiled sadly. Rebecca was ... vibrant. She filled rooms just by entering them. "Noah has that same quality when he feels secure," Cassandra observed. "He's been telling the gardener about photosynthesis for 20 minutes. They watched Noah gesturing enthusiastically. To the patient groundskeeper, "I've been absent," Jonathan admitted quietly, "even when I'm physically present." "You've been grieving," Cassandra replied without judgment. "But you're here now." One rainy Saturday, Noah developed a fever. Jonathan canceled his weekend meetings and sat by his son's bedside, reading the adventure stories Cassandra had selected. When she arrived with homemade soup, Jonathan realized she'd come, despite it being her day off. "You didn't have to come." "In," he said, as they stood in the hallway outside Noah's room. "I wanted to make sure he was okay," she replied, "that you were too." Their eyes held for a moment longer than necessary. Jonathan found himself noticing the flecks of gold in her brown eyes, the slight curl escaping her practical ponytail. "Thank you," he said, meaning far more than for the soup that evening. After Noah fell asleep, Jonathan invited Cassandra to join him for tea in the solarium. Their conversation flowed easily, punctuated by comfortable silences. When she described her childhood in a small coastal town, Jonathan realized he was genuinely listening, not just waiting for his turn to speak or mentally reviewing business matters. "You've brought life back to this house," he said suddenly. Cassandra looked startled. "I've just done my job."
Oh.
No, Jonathan shook his head. "It's more than that." Noah smiles now. He talks about the future again. He hesitated. "And I find myself looking forward to mornings." The admission hung between them, fragile and significant. "I should go," Cassandra said softly, rising from her chair. "It's getting late." At the door, Jonathan impulsively asked, "Would you and Noah like to visit the planetarium this weekend? The one my foundation helped renovate?" Cassandra's smile illuminated her entire face. He'd love that.
We
Both would. After she left, Jonathan stood in the foyer, realizing that for the first time in years, the house didn't feel quite so empty. The planetarium visit marked a turning point. Noah sat between them in the darkened theater, his face upturned in wonder as constellations wheeled overhead. Jonathan found himself watching Cassandra's profile as often as the celestial display, tracing the curve of her smile with his gaze. Afterward, over ice cream, Noah chatted excitedly about becoming an astronaut. When Cassandra dabbed a smudge of chocolate from his chin, the three of them together felt strangely right, like pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. "Dad, can we do more family things?" Noah asked as they drove home. The question hung in the air. Jonathan met Cassandra's eyes in the rearview mirror. "I'd like that very much," he replied carefully. Summer approached, bringing the question of Noah's education during the break. Jonathan found Cassandra in the garden one evening, grading Noah's final assignments. "I've been thinking," he began, sitting beside her on the stone bench. "Noah needs stability." Cassandra nodded, looking up from her papers. "Children thrive with consistent routines and relationships. That's why I'd like to offer you a permanent position. It's not just as Noah's tutor, but as our educational director. You could develop programs, hire additional instructors as needed." Cassandra set down her pen, studying his face. "Jonathan, is that really what you're asking me?" The use of his first name, rare, despite months in his home, made his heart race. "What do you mean?" "I care deeply for Noah," she said carefully. "I've come to care for you too. But I won't accept a position created to keep me near if you're afraid to admit why you really want me to stay." Jonathan stood, pacing before her. "I haven't done this in a long time. Felt this way. Neither have I." "Noah asked you once what love means," Jonathan said, finally meeting her eyes. Your answer changed everything for me. You said it's about finding someone who feels like home, who makes your heart feel safe enough to be brave again. He took her hands in his. Cassandra, you and Noah, you both feel like home to me now. I don't want you to be my employee. I want to see where this feeling between us might lead. Cassandra's eyes glistened. I was afraid to hope. I was just afraid, Jonathan admitted, with a self-deprecating smile. But you make me brave. When their lips finally met, it felt like coming home after a long journey. Neither noticed Noah watching from the terrace, a triumphant smile spreading across his face. Later that evening, the three of them sat together in the living room. Jonathan had once avoided planning a summer sailing trip. Noah fell asleep against Cassandra's shoulder while she and Jonathan spoke in quiet voices about possibilities and second chances. Do you think Rebecca would mind? Cassandra asked softly. Jonathan touched the wedding band he still wore. Wanted laughter in this house. She made me promise to find joy again somehow. He gently removed the ring and placed it in his pocket. It's time to keep that promise. As Cassandra leaned her head against his shoulder, Jonathan realized that wealth had never made the mansion feel so full as these two people did. For all his billions, his greatest fortune sat beside him on an old sofa, showing him that love wasn't about riches or power, it was about finding his way home.